about being here. Hey, expect this to do everything throughout the week, win the day, and I promise you we'll be in this for the rest of the year, man. Victory, victory, victory. We're not going anywhere yet. Sorry.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fans, G-Bag Nation, 2 to 7 weekdays. And with me, as always, New Bear Lesniewski. So, yeah, you know, how dangerous are the Cowboys? Here's what I got for you guys. Hit the like button if you agree. Comment if you think there's something we need to understand, New Bear. But I think this is very different. It keeps putting you to me and me to you. So I'll go ahead and switch that again. But yeah, for the first time since the Parcells and Wade Phillips eras, these Cowboys can actually stop the run and rush the passer at the same time. And if you look back, 2014, 2016 had incredible seasons. Run defense was okay at times, couldn't rush the passer. It was Tank Lawrence and a bunch of bums. Then 21 through 23, Micah has emerged, but they were too dependent on the takeaways. The defensive tackles were neglected. The linebackers were very, very mid. And, if you didn't get takeaways, you were toast. And then, you know, the other thing about that stretch is the offense was crapping out in big moments, which takes me to my second reason. They actually have a clue on offense now. Gone are Garrett and McCarthy. In is Brian Schottenheimer and all the magic he is working on the offensive side. And Eberflus has taken significant strides. I think they have the best coaching staff they have since probably Parcells. And I've said this several times over the years and on this podcast as well. It's not just a get into the tournament league anymore. You have to build a great team. And if you stay healthy, you get to dominate your league on the way to the Super Bowl, at least on the NFC side. The AFC has been a lot of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes for the last 25 years, but the trend of going all in has almost entirely eliminated your Cinderella runs. And the Cowboys were under the impression they could be Cinderella in previous playoff runs. But I don't know if this is shoddy educating Jerry or Jerry feeling all of his 83 years, but they have finally built a roster that is built to succeed in the most important month of January. So a lot going on, but dude, Cowboy Gavin is riding, and it's been at least 4 years. After the debacle of 2021, I went flat out cynical. I didn't care that they won 12 games. I said, this team's going nowhere in the playoffs. It's clear they can't stop the run. Connor Riley, offensive line coach, when he took the job, said, if you can't run and stop the run, you're actually dead in the water. You're lying to yourselves. And this Cowboys team has finally figured it out. So I'm freaking fired up, even though their playoff percentage odds right now still just say 24%.
Well, the one thing about, you know, what you're talking about how it's not just to get in and everyone has a chance and all things are equal, and how that's changed from, you know, when you first started seeing wild cards make runs. You do have to get in. Like, if you don't get in, there is zero chance. You can talk about whatever the percentages are to do the damn thing. If you don't get into the dance, I mean, it doesn't matter what music they play. So one of the things that you just mentioned that I don't think was an accident and is an accident was Jerry Jones's age. And that plays into him wanting to make moves, but more importantly, like feeling the pressure to get it done, and maybe to do deals that are middle fingers to everyone who thinks he's just been running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And like he said on the red carpet, had gotten complacent because he had those rings and there was really nothing else you could say to him with the world's most expensive team. And I don't mean that on the field. I mean the valuation if he were to walk away from things. And in the middle of all that, it's not about necessarily age, right? As this is my fullback year and you're coming up on 50, but it's about experience and it's about perspective. And when you think about everything that Shotty's been through to be at this point where he can tap into what his old man was, what all the Nepo baby stuff might be, and what this team fundamentally now is, at the same time, you have Clayton Adams willing to go to the podium and say things like, when I see things in this copycat league and I was younger, I was willing to say, hey, that was just cool shit. Can't wait to put that in. And now he's looking at that saying, not just what do my guys do well, but how are the guys we're going up against going to try to stop it? And you have this confluence of perspective and guys who are still young in their careers, young in the opportunities they have at the highest level, meaning like Shoddy being a rookie head coach. And all this stuff adds up to these dudes being in rooms, not afraid to tell each other the truth.
I love that. And the accountability factor is huge. You know how inspiring it is on a football team when you know if somebody messes up, they're going to be called to the carpet for it. And if you're not following team rules, you are going to be disciplined. Not only does it make you stay on your P's and Q's to avoid that fate, but it roots out resentment. You know how annoying it is when you're on a team and the star player, whether it's the coach's kid or he's just really good, has special rules, and how you can sort of look sideways at that guy and lose respect for your coach. Like, how much authority are you going to have when you really can't follow through with what you're expected to say? You know, I love what you said about the copy, cat situation, because I was listening to Brevin Spanford. He was on with Brad Sham in the Cowboys Hour on my way home tonight after the G-Bag Nation, and I got about 30 or 40 minutes of it. But he was talking about the coaching staff, and I guess the kids use copy-paste now. He says it's a copy-paste league.
Yeah.
I guess it's more digitally native or whatever. But he was talking about how they can see the Lions do something and have it in their game plan the following week. And I've been dying to see a Cowboys coach that wanted to do that. I think sometimes ego gets involved. It's like, oh, no, we don't need to copy paste. We know what we're doing here. And, we don't want to copy and steal from other teams because maybe they think it's silly. I don't know what Jason Garrett was doing. Mike McCarthy did a little bit more of it. But such a big part of this is the coaching staff's undying curiosity and thirst for knowledge to improve themselves. And I don't know the last time the Cowboys had something like that going for them.
Well, I think this is going to be the most interesting thing is when Diggs steps back in, is he willing to put his face in the fan? Is he willing to not just run around and be in the way, but be part of like putting his body on the line to make plays? Because you're seeing Bland being willing to get flat out embarrassed because it's what the team is asking him to do. You're watching Kenneth Murray have games where he's doing things he hasn't done all year and maybe hasn't done in years. And it's not always pretty. It's not always clean. It's not always perfect, but the effort is there. The intensity is there. The intention is there. And you can live with guys making mistakes if they're giving it everything that they have. I mean, my favorite version of that is like young Mooch, Steve Mariucci, and Holmgren and all those guys up in Green Bay telling Brett Favre, who maybe didn't know all the plays, just throw it as hard. Believe in the throw, because even if you read it wrong, you might just throw it by some dude's ear hole, and we end up being right. And like that's a real thing when you're talking about everybody's big, everybody's long, everybody's strong, everybody's fast, underwear Olympics on HGH. And then you got to show up and play. And you see week to week teams quit on their scheme, on their coach, on each other, on the game flow. There's all these, and then you see the teams that fight. And that's been the thing that's the most inspiring about the change with these Cowboys is Quinnen Williams is going to hold dudes accountable. And now when he steps off the field, you're getting fresh Kenny, fresh Osa, right? You're getting guys stepping in. You're seeing Clowney run, and not just run like he can't run like he did when he was coming out of USC East, but he's running harder and longer, if not faster, than he ever has on an NFL football field because the effort and the intensity goes up. Like you said, when there's other men looking you in the eye saying, we're not going to put up with anything your best.
Yeah, you got to bring it. And Tyler Booker, Tyler Smith, a number of guys on the offensive side are holding that. I think Quinnen Williams has taken the leadership to another level. Like, it's one thing if you have a guy like a Solomon Thomas or last year an Eric Kendricks. This year it's been Kenneth Murray. Like, somewhere between pretty good and okay players trying to lead the charge on being a leader. But when somebody who's really great that's doing stuff that nobody else on the team can do is doing that, it just hits harder. It's more inspiring. It's like, okay, I'm going to do my hardest because that guy is special and he's going going to do stuff that's, going to create all sorts of havoc. And Quinnen Williams is absolutely balling, and I think that's maybe the biggest reason to believe this team is different is their collection of defensive tackles. But Quinnen Williams' pressure rate has more than doubled in his time with the Cowboys over the last 3 games. Like, he is energized in a way. He recognizes the opportunity. He knows what real crappy football looks like. Malik Hooker has stepped back in and played 2 of the best games he's had all season. Donovan Wilson has had 3 very solid games since coming back from injury. DeMarvion Overshown stepped in, and he's really not all that close to what he was pre-injuries. I think he's going to get back there. Certainly the athletic testing says so. But even that being said, he's played the best linebacker that we've seen all season for the Cowboys. I mean, it was dumpster fire atrocious. And now you have his athleticism, his speed, his sure tackling. And then Revel and Carson have been sufficient, but they've avoided giving up the big plays. Like, when's the last time that storyline from the first 5 weeks of the season has really popped up and reared its ugly head? So I think all that goes to the buy-in and the learning and what we're starting to see on both sides of the ball. I said coming out of training camp, I think Dak has finally found the perfect coach to complement his style. Right? It's serious, it's tough, but at the same time, it's joyful. It lends itself to camaraderie and morale. And Dak's like maybe one of the greatest leaders in the history of football with the way that he brings all that together and has this tireless, sort of sense for building relationships and community and taking care of guys. I mean, obviously his background is well documented and how this stuff is super important to him, and his perspective on life is really tremendous. But now he has a coach that wants to help build that with him instead of, having his own ideas for what's ideal. So you get that synergy between your clear leader of players and the head coach, and it just makes it that much easier for everybody to fall in line.
You just talked about bringing it all together, and you also talked about going back to training camp. And I can't help but think about how impressed I was with the effort and the intensity. And I was like, man, these guys, they're really getting after it. And in particular, the D line comes down to that one end of the field, and they go into their own little corner, and they got the sleds, and you can really get up close and feel the intensity of them popping pads. And they're also doing really innovative, fun stuff. I was taking videos, sending it back to my guys saying, hey man, were you doing this shit 20 years ago? When you were making, training camp rosters and doing different things, to some of my Kentucky guys, and they were having some fun with some of the different, like, bouncing ball, technique stuff. Not sure about this or that looks cool, but like, who wasn't there? Kenny Clark Williams, who has been in and out of the lineup because of injuries. You talk about Diggs being up and down. You talk about Elam not being there at all. Hooker and the different guys who've been in and out of the lineup and how much that affects things. So you talk about training camp intensity, punishing them for runs, having a much more punishing camp culture of cool vibes into a raging dumpster fire in the worst defense in the league. And the offense was good enough to make it interesting, but if they weren't clicking on all cylinders, you had no chance in hell of even really wanting to watch that game as a fan, because they were just going to run away from you, or at the very least, they were going to make a backup quarterback, look like Joe Montana. And now all of those things, like every single thing that made 2025 being a success an impossibility, is a gap that's been filled. And the culture was still built. And Dak and GP coming into his own, CD coming back around. Now you have all these other guys where you're sitting there going, what's left? And the answer is no excuses.
No excuses at all. And just to build on that real quick, I think the point that Jerry's in is similar to the point that Dak is in, where the end of the career is fast approaching. You get a player who's still in his prime. The game mentally is slowing down. He's talked about how much easier it is to see things and process things now. He's still got enough athleticism, and he's at an age where he can look at guys and sort of have the feeling of, I'm not going to let your youth and naivete about how short this is career is mess it up for me. I think Quinnen Williams is in a situation like that as well, especially after 6.5 seasons with the Jets. So let's talk about how they get in. Cowboys can lose one of these next 4 if the Eagles lose 3. Philly's magic number is 4. So, 2 Cowboys losses, 2 Eagles wins, that would get it done. For the Cowboys, it's Lions, Chargers, Vikings, Giants, Commanders. I feel like right now they're most likely going to go 4-1. I could see them running the table. I don't see them losing any more than one of these. Either the Lions or Chargers could get them, but I don't think both will. Eagles need to then, in that situation, lose 3 of the following: Chargers, Bills, Washington, Oakland, Washington. Now, the great news is Sunday Night Football. Commanders gave the Broncos a run for their money. Like they got something.
With Mariota.
Yeah.
Right? That Wayne Daniels out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
my boy Chris Rodriguez, Kentucky in the house, right? Like Ray Davis for the Bills, and Chris Ray. You're seeing some real. I mean, I tweeted a couple of things about how, as bad as Kentucky was on Saturday, it was nice to see them finally doing something for the weekend on Sunday. But I'll let that go.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about then who gets the most credit for this. Let me ask you this question here, and leave a comment down below. Power rank the 3. Who gets the most credit for Cowboys' success? Now, I think today when I asked the G-Bag Nation, Wolchek said Micah Parsons. And
he's a funny dude, man.
Micah Parsons for screwing things up so much that it forced the Cowboys to make the trade, which ultimately landed them Quinnen Williams. But, so if you want to go outside the box, I'm here for it. But to me, it comes down to 3 things. Do you want to give more credit to the front office, to the coaches, or to the players for this turnaround, winning 3 in a row?
How about the fact that for the first time, maybe how old are you? If you haven't won in 30 years, then you're talking about people that could be our children who don't know Super Bowls for the Dallas Cowboys, right? And that's grown children, right? I mean, as old as you are, you would still have to be a young man to have a 30-year-old running around in this world. But like, people joke all the time about how spoiled, the Cubs didn't win forever, and then they did, and now then they only know winning. Red Sox, Patriots, the whole city of Boston, and all these different franchises that go these long times without winning, and then multiple teams win, and all that generation knows is winning. And there was a time where that was true about Dallas, specifically running football, running camp on the league, where if they showed up and they were healthy, you knew they were going to win the damn thing. Like the San Francisco 49ers 1994 had to go get Dion, had to change everything about their franchise, you want to talk about culture, you want to talk about change, you want to talk about, that was the only reason they got past them, and they had to do that because they knew that Dallas was the standard. All the standard is the standard talk, from Pittsburgh to any other franchise that like there was a run where, until the wheels fell off, you just expected Dallas to get it done. And that has not been the case. In fact, it's been the opposite for so long, to the point where you would very easily call them front runners at the first sign of adversity. CeeDee Lamb's crashing out, or you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And whether that's Tony Romo, dropping a holding situation, or zebras, or, any of the things, you're now looking for any other thing that could go wrong because you're expecting it to, because it has. And the thing about this team now being as close to complete as it's going to be relative to what they have to go to battle with is you now can have a plan, and you can say, if this, then that. Here's how we attack. Here's how we adjust. And then here's how we adjust to the adjustments, as whomever we get a draw against might show up and try to shock the world, given what we're capable of doing. And when you think about the brain trust in the room, now having the players to do so, it's a different conversation than it was just a few weeks ago.
It absolutely is, and I think obviously the players deserve a lot of credit, and I sometimes cringe when in sports radio, like a great position group is going off and these players are emerging into stardom, and we want to talk about the coach or something like that. So that's not what I'm trying to do here, but I do think all this is impossible without the right coaching staff. Like,
well, I will say this, like in Pittsburgh right now, where everyone's clamoring for everyone to get fired, James Harrison was out there talking about very calmly how his ceiling in the NFL was special teams player du jour, and Keith Butler made him into an all-pro, unlocked something inside of his potential. You cannot overlook, from a technique, from a trust, from a confidence, from a repetition, from a muscle, like unlocking something in a guy and doing that on a Hall of Fame trajectory. When that happens, and then you're able to say, okay, well, they don't do that with everybody. Yeah, but they might take that practice squad guy and they might make him a starter, a contributor on a winning team, and that coach is getting that position group to level up. When the opposite is true, there is almost no chance. Like what argument do you want to have? Like, great players cannot overcome bad coach and scheme being put in. When you're running cover 3 against 4 verts, it doesn't matter who's playing free safety.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like the sequence of the calling plays, the design of it, how much deception are you providing to the opposition? And then can you synchronize it? Can you teach 5 or 11 guys or 3 guys to all be on the same page and read and react simultaneously to the feedback that they're given on the field? And, that stuff can be difficult, but like, there's no way Mike McCarthy or Jason Garrett would have created an offense that was capable of scoring 30 points per game with an offensive line this bad. I don't care if you have Lamb and Pickens. Like the absolute brakes got applied to the Cowboys offense as soon as you made them one-dimensional for the last 10 years, all of Dak Prescott's career. And this has been a year where you're really in a pretty steep learning curve with Tyler Guyton, and Terrence Steele is at the end of his career. And the way that it all comes together is just, it's poetry in motion. Then you add to that the individual player developments and all the precise techniques that the Shanahan family has sort of innovated or taken to another level as far as what is capable of teaching guys and harvesting advantages, even when you're not winning individual matchups. Like those kind of things are really what separates the coaching staff from the players. But I'm going to give the most credit to Jerry Jones in the front office, and I thought that's kind of where you were going with it when you were leading in or giving your initial thoughts on this topic. Like the fact that it's been 30 years. I don't think Jerry Jones wants to go down that final path, that writing that final chapter in his life and having anxiety about, holy crap, I'm about to check out of this thing, and my son Steven has never put together a Super Bowl winner, right? I'm not setting up the next 2 generations of my family's life to be able to capitalize on what I've built because we've been so mediocre for so damn long. So as my final maybe gift to the family or my parting shot, the final chapter of my legacy is they won a 4th Super Bowl. They gave all these Cowboys fans that magic carpet ride they've been dreaming about. And now we can go back to engagement farming and running business first operations for at least a couple of decades.
Yeah, I mean, who was the third one? So you said front office, coaches, players. I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I go 1, 2, 3: front office, coaches, players.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the players have to be the ones making plays. But I mean, how many times? I don't think you have to look any further than George Pickens to see the difference between coaching. You don't have to look scheme, how much of a difference that make culture, how much of a difference that makes in turn. And like, if you're going to say a player is what he is and whatever that may be, and this is how we're going to deal with it, and it's not getting him involved early, and it's not letting him run the route tree, and it's only speaking about him like he's a child publicly and he has all this work to do. I mean, it's basically George Pickens in Pittsburgh was Jaden Blue, but he was allowed to go out there on Sundays, and every once in a while he'd make some plays that would make you go, oh yeah, this is what this dude is capable of. And then you would go into the next week and 3 targets or 1 catch for 18 yards or whatever the case may be, where you're just like, why is this not a focal point? Why is you want to talk about keeping the main thing? How is the main thing not about feeding your studs? Shout out Will Stein, new University of Kentucky football coach. We'll enjoy that $38 million buyout for however long Mark Stoops will let us pay it. But like, all kidding aside, the difference between George Pickens, I wrote about it this summer, and you were like, is that realistic? And all I did was take his splits in Pittsburgh where he was criminally mismanaged and add 10%, or split the difference between him and Randy Moss and add 10%. He's already past that. And you think about in Pittsburgh, the narrative is this the worst trade in Steelers history? And you can also say, if he was in Pittsburgh, he would not have this production. That's what makes Sunday such a paradox, because everything matters, right? The ownership and the way that they build the infrastructure, the coaches and the way that they build the scheme, carry the culture to every level of the team, and then the players and how they show up and show out. And you can put a ton of blame on George Pickens for what he did not do in Pittsburgh. What changed? Pickens didn't change all that much. He's still doing things like missing team buses. He's just also going out there on Sunday and having the opportunity to get unsportsmanlike penalties when he hugs the damn goalposts.
Yeah, he's killing it, dude. Unbelievable, and the matchup nightmare that they create. I know we talked about it a couple of shows ago, but it's the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, and it's not even close. Another reason to believe here, Joseph Hoyt Morning News has a great story up on Tyler Booker. Apparently, Shoddy recently gave permission for the rookie to speak up more, just as he did at Bama. Since then, Dak has heard Booker say a specific word often, dominate. I got a quote here from Booker in the story. Says, leave no doubt in your opponent's mind. You play some games, it'll be like, oh, you guys won only because of this. You guys only won because of that. When you dominate, you want to leave no doubt in anyone's mind that you are victorious for a reason. I don't only want to win, I want to dominate. It just pushes you further. What I think of when I hear something like that, and I quote this often, Bill Walton saying, if you play for the money, that's all you'll ever get. Cowboys seem to be collecting guys that take pride in absolutely dominating. There's another sound of the sidelines with Tyler Smith, another great speaker, right? And he was talking about, look yourself in the mirror and ask, who do you want to be? This is about your legacy. The money's going to come for most of us, right? The money is, we're playing professional sports. If you're good, the money's coming. If that's all you're motivated by, once you get the money, it's pretty much the end of your upward trajectory. Trevon Diggs, I know every organization in pro sports has multiple examples probably on their roster currently of guys who became decisively worse once the money came in. You have so many Cowboys leaders now that have been paid or are about to be paid in a very significant way. And it's just clear they're driven by greatness. And that's what you need to cut through this culture of complacency that has dominated DFW for 3 decades now.
Booker was talking about taking people's wills. I guess it would just be will singular back in training camp. And then he started struggling because he had never seen, like, as good as the SEC is, like, everyone is SEC good on Sunday. Where did Barry and Winfrey come from? And all of a sudden that dude's winning one-on-ones, right? Like, you forget who that dude was and where he came from. So Booker was struggling a little bit. And I remember talking to you in Oxnard about, like, confidence is going to be the key for this young man because he has all the physical traits except for the burst and the long speed, if you can call it that, like you see with like a Broderick Jones in Pittsburgh as a big time draft pick who was struggling with a lot of the technical issues, but then you see him in the screen game or running downfield, chasing dudes down, running them 30 and 40 yards. That's not what Booker has, but Booker has everything else. Booker's not a Booker. You want him in the phone booth. Like he would wrestle Superman when he's changing clothes. And he was saying that stuff. And then he had to go suit up himself. And he struggled a little bit. He's battled some injuries. And to see him, I mean, I said show up and show out. To see him go toe-to-toe with Jalen Carter, to see him, like, not just be talking for talking's sake and really not saying anything before those moments, but accentuating them after. And the only other thing I'll add to this is, speaking of accentuation and speaking of being in the moment and saying things, the look on Guyton's face when Trey Smith smacked his shoulder pads when he was given that speech, like, this is the not bleeping around crew. Like, that's the thing, is he had to get in shape. He had to get it right, meaning Guyton, and he has to show up and give it everything he's got because he knows if he doesn't, he's felt what that dude's hands feel like next to him, and he doesn't want to see that if he lets that man down.
Yeah. So many good positive stories here throughout the season for the Cowboys from the point they started to where they are now. And can't wait for Tyler Guyton to get back in there. But Nate Thomas was pretty dang good. Depending on who you ask, 0 pressures or 1 pressure allowed against Karlaftis. That's something. Trevon Diggs back at practice. I think if you could guarantee me that Diggs is going to be better than he was at the start of this season, better than he was last year when he played, give me start of 2023 Trevon Diggs when he still had the ball skills and he was making plays. PBUs, interceptions, and all that. But he took his physicality and tackling up a notch after really being talked about badly coming off of the 2022 thing, and just making business decisions. And he did that quite a bit early in this year. But if you could get me Trevon Diggs at close to that 2023 level, I'd pick them to go undefeated. Today was his second day back at practice since having his 21-day window open. He looks good. How would you handle this? I'm throwing him back in there because I think Carson and Revel are still slightly below average players. As cool as it is that they're not dumpster fire young corners getting their feet wet, they are not nearly as good as what Trevon Diggs could be. I'm just throwing him out there and starting him immediately.
Yeah, you do, and you trust him, and you say, hey, you're a vet, and you've put in the work, and we believe you're ready to play, so play. And I also think you do that because you have to find out what you've got, and you got to do so immediately because, Amon-Ra St. Brown might not be up, but J-Mo is. And then you're going to see Jefferson and Addison, and then you're going to see Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen and oh, goodness, why can't I say his name? Johnston out in LA. And, it's not going to stop because it's going to be McLaurin and others this week. It's going to be this ragtag group of misfits that Jackson Dart just doesn't care throwing FU balls to, running around like a chicken with his head cut off. There's plays out there to be made. And more importantly, because the guys they've picked up are making those plays and Eberflus is no longer being called for his job, he has no excuses. And that's really what I was talking about earlier, where, when everyone kind of sucks, when you're literally the worst defense in the league, everyone's pointing fingers and there's blame to go around for there's a ton of noise, so you're not going to get singled out. If Seven makes business decisions, his ass isn't going to be on the field because they're just not going to stand for it. So he has to go out there, and the same way we're talking about giving it everything you got, putting your face in the fan, putting your body on the line, he can do all the things to protect himself. He can do all the things to say, hey, my future might not be here, and I want to make sure I still have a body left to play for 5 or 7 more years if that's what he wants to do, without being, I don't want to say a bad word, I don't want to go viral or become a meme, attacking a man's manhood, but he was eating turf like the turf monster, like the sniper got him from the stands when there was no reason for him to be on the ground.
No.
There were weeks where business decision would be putting it politely, and that's just not going to get it done.
He does this weird thing where he fakes like he got turned. Like, oh no, I got turned, man. I was going to get that guy, but he just put on a great move, and now I'm falling down, and he's running free. 5 games to go in the season. If I'm Trevon Diggs' agent, I'm like, man, this is more than enough time. You can either save your career with the Cowboys, they'll bring you back next year, or you'll be a free agent, and you'll be highly sought after. If we can go get a couple of picks, couple of PBUs, and tackle well, that would be enough to earn you another 3 years and $40 or $50 million.
Right, but the other thing is, like, there's a side of this where he just stops dicking around and he's a Cowboy forever. And if he's never an 11 pick all-pro guy, but he's just super solid, he's revered. And if they're going to win, and they win not in spite of him, but because of him, like, that's the kind of stuff that you're talking about when you think about, those 94 49ers, like, everyone remembers going and getting Dion, but think about everyone else on that team who had to step up and level up to make sure that if you took Michael Irvin away, Alvin Harper, Novacek, everyone else would just figure out how to get the job done, because those things happened in the years before and the very next year thereafter. If you're a main cog in a winning team and you put up a few more Pro Bowls and maybe sneak in another All-Pro because you have a big pick season, I mean, there's a world where he ends up in the Ring of Honor, or at the very least as a guy who's invited to all the damn cookouts.
Well said, man. I got one last thing so people know we're not totally smoking the Homer Hopium nonstop. This year is different. This team is the best team I've covered right now as they sit today. Wouldn't it be the most ironic Cowboys fail narrative that it seems the football gods have been subjecting us to for the last 3 decades if when you actually have your best chance of making a run, you don't even get in?
Yeah, the Jacoby Brissett, I'll say this, that it's as hard as it is for me to get all the way around on Caleb Williams for my my true hometown team. I know some people have asked like who my favorite team is. Like I'm a huge fan of the Cowboys and the brand and going back to my childhood and the imprint that they had at the time when I was coming up through this thing and doing this with you and that creating an opportunity for that. I mean, my parents are pissed because they joke about, I've lived all over the country and you want to support the local team, but everywhere I've lived, I was in LA, the Lakers won, in San Francisco, the Giants win, like different sports, different teams. And it's a fun thing my wife and I have talked about on our little journey. We've been in Pittsburgh for a long time. Ain't nobody winning, hockey, which, is a totally different deal. And now Sid playing as well as he is, even at his advanced age, people talking about, them kind of just, living in this purgatory the same way as the baseball team and the football squad, where it's tough, to be a fan in Pittsburgh right now. But like the Bears are good. That was a long walk off a short pier for me to say the Bears are fucking good. And guess what? Carolina acquitted themselves really well against the Rams. It's that Cardinals one that's going to come back to haunt their ass.
Absolutely. It very well could. All right. If you believe this could be their year to end the drought, hit that like button, throw some comments down below. Like New Bear just said, we're looking at these comments. We're paying attention. We're talking football with you. You don't have to be mean to get our attention, by the way, but if you are, we'll probably still be cool or at least debate you. Okay. Until next time, we'll be back real soon to take a hard look at this Cowboys-Lions matchup with you. How about wow?